The train had barely pulled away from the station when a young woman in a dark green coat rushed down the aisle, dropped into the empty seat beside me, grabbed my hand with trembling fingers, and whispered words that made my entire world stop. "You're my husband for the next 3 hours." Before I could ask what she meant, she leaned gently against my shoulder as if we had loved each other for years, while 3 men entered the carriage, scanning every face with cold determination. I had no idea who she was, what she was running from, or why she had chosen me, but something in her frightened eyes told me that standing up and walking away wasn't an option. Before we continue this unforgettable story, please take a moment to like this video, comment where you're watching from, share it with someone who believes in kindness and second chances, and subscribe to Soulful Tales. Every small act of support helps us continue bringing emotional stories that touch the heart. My name is Rowan Mercer. At 36, my life had become painfully ordinary. I worked as a restoration carpenter, repairing antique furniture that most people no longer appreciated. My marriage had ended 2 years earlier, after my wife decided she wanted a different future, one without me. Since then, silence had become my closest companion. That morning, I boarded the Denver-bound train simply, hoping to visit my aging mother before her surgery. I expected nothing more exciting than reading a novel and watching endless fields slide past the windows beneath a bright summer sky. The woman beside me looked no older than 30. Her chestnut hair was slightly messy, as though she had been running. Tiny freckles rested across her cheeks, and despite the fear clouding her beautiful gray eyes, there was unmistakable kindness in them. She kept holding my hand tightly, almost painfully, while pretending to smile. 3 sharply dressed men slowly walked through the carriage. Their expressions remained calm, but their eyes searched every passenger with unsettling precision. One paused briefly near our seats. The woman rested her head against my shoulder and squeezed my fingers. Without understanding why, I gently wrapped my arm around her. The man studied us for several long seconds before finally moving on. Only after they disappeared into the next carriage did she release a shaky breath. She quietly apologized for dragging a complete stranger into something dangerous. She explained that her name was Maris Ellaway, and she had spent the last year caring for her grandfather, a retired investigative journalist who had uncovered financial crimes involving powerful businessmen. Before his death 3 weeks earlier, he had entrusted her with documents exposing millions of dollars in fraud connected to charities, meant to help struggling families. Those men weren't police. They were trying to recover evidence before it reached federal investigators. She had already contacted the authorities, but until she could personally deliver the documents waiting in a secure locker at the final station, she needed to stay unnoticed. She had noticed something about me moments before boarding. I looked lonely, harmless, and honest. She gambled her future on that first impression. I stared out the window as golden fields rolled beneath endless blue skies. Every logical part of my mind told me to alert, train security, and remove myself from the situation. But another part remembered my father. Years earlier, he once told me that courage rarely arrives after you've prepared for it. Usually, courage appears disguised as inconvenience, asking ordinary people to make impossible choices. So I stayed. For the next hour, we played the roles of husband and wife. We laughed quietly whenever the suspicious men passed by. We shared sandwiches from the dining cart. We looked through old family photographs, stored on my phone so anyone watching would believe our relationship was genuine. Somewhere between pretending and reality, something unexpected happened. The fear in her eyes slowly faded. The emptiness inside mine did too. Maris admitted that caring for her grandfather had consumed every part of her life. Friends drifted away. Relationships never survived. She believed doing the right thing often meant ending up alone. I understood that feeling better than she realized. When my marriage collapsed, I convinced myself I simply wasn't enough for anyone anymore. I buried myself in work because old furniture never abandoned, the people trying to repair it. She smiled gently when I said that. She told me people weren't furniture. Broken hearts could heal too. Those simple words settled somewhere deep inside me. Around noon, the train stopped briefly in a quiet farming town. Sunlight poured across the platform. Families greeted loved ones. Children waved excitedly. For just a moment, the world looked perfectly peaceful. Then one of the men stepped onto the platform and made a phone call. When he returned, two more unfamiliar men boarded the train from another carriage. Maris immediately noticed them. So did I. The search had expanded. She quietly confessed something she hadn't revealed earlier. The documents weren't inside her backpack. They were hidden inside an antique wooden jewelry box carefully, packed within my own luggage. Hours before boarding, she had secretly switched identical bags after overhearing those men discussing searches at the station. She hadn't trusted anyone. Until me. I laughed softly, despite the absurdity. Without knowing it, I had been protecting the evidence from the beginning. The situation became dangerous faster than either of us expected. One of the men finally approached our seats directly. He politely asked whether anyone had seen a missing family member. His smile never reached his eyes. Maris answered calmly, resting her hand naturally over mine. She described imaginary vacation plans, spoke about our anniversary, and even joked about my terrible cooking. Her performance was flawless. The man apologized and walked away. But before leaving, he glanced toward the luggage compartment overhead. He suspected something. Minutes later, the train unexpectedly slowed because maintenance. Crews were inspecting the tracks ahead. Passengers became restless. The delay created exactly the opportunity those men needed. While everyone watched through the windows, one quietly reached toward my luggage. I stood immediately, not aggressively, simply enough to block access. He smiled politely and claimed he had mistaken my bag for his own. Neither of us believed it. The conductor soon announced passengers should remain seated. The man reluctantly returned to his companions. Maris whispered, "Thank you," so quietly I barely heard it. As afternoon sunlight filled the carriage, our conversation became less about danger and more about life. She asked why I had never remarried. I admitted I had stopped believing anyone could truly choose me again. She looked directly into my eyes and said loneliness often convinces good people that they are invisible. But kindness is never invisible. Someone always notices. Those words stayed with me. When the train finally entered the outskirts of Denver, tension returned immediately. The final station approached. If those men realized where the evidence actually was, everything could collapse within minutes. The doors opened. Passengers flooded onto the platform beneath warm afternoon sunlight. Maris and I walked side by side, still pretending. The men followed only a short distance behind. Without warning, two federal investigators emerged from the crowd. Maris had quietly activated an emergency message using her grandfather's secure contact during one of our earlier conversations. She had been waiting for the right moment. The investigators approached calmly. The three men instantly understood they had lost. One attempted to run. Another reached toward my bag. Before he could touch it, officers already positioned nearby intervened. Within seconds, everything ended. No dramatic fight, no explosions. Just handcuffs clicking beneath a clear blue sky. Maris finally opened the antique jewelry box. Inside rested several encrypted drives and handwritten notebooks documenting years of financial crimes. The investigators thanked both of us. One admitted the evidence would likely protect thousands of families whose charitable donations had been stolen. For the first time in years, I felt my ordinary life had mattered. Not because I was extraordinary, because I chose not to walk away. Outside the station, the afternoon breeze carried the scent of fresh rain, even though the sun still shone brightly overhead. The crisis had ended. Our strange little marriage had officially lasted exactly 3 hours. Neither of us seemed eager to say goodbye. She smiled through tired eyes. Then she surprised me one final time. She admitted choosing me hadn't been entirely random. When she first entered the train, she saw me helping an elderly passenger lift a heavy suitcase without expecting thanks. Most people looked away. I didn't. That tiny act convinced her I was the safest stranger in the entire carriage. Kindness had introduced us long before words ever could. Months passed. Life quietly returned to normal. Mother's surgery was successful. Work remained steady. Then one autumn afternoon, an envelope arrived at my workshop. Inside was a handwritten invitation. Maris was opening a non-profit organization dedicated to protecting elderly whistleblowers and investigative journalists. She wanted me there. The ceremony took place inside a beautifully restored historic library. Bright afternoon sunlight streamed through tall windows, filling every corner with warmth. After the speeches ended, she found me standing beside an old oak bookshelf. She thanked me again. I reminded her she had thanked me enough already. She smiled. Then she admitted something that made my heart stop. She had never really believed in second chances until the train ride. Not for herself. Not for anyone. But meeting one ordinary man willing to help a frightened stranger had changed everything. I laughed quietly. I confessed that she had rescued me too, because before meeting her, I had stopped believing my life still had purpose beyond surviving each day. Sometimes we think we're saving someone else. Sometimes they're saving us at exactly the same time. That afternoon, we walked outside beneath brilliant blue skies, where children laughed in the nearby park and leaves danced gently across the sidewalks. Neither of us knew exactly what the future would bring. For once, that uncertainty felt beautiful instead of frightening, because hope had quietly returned, not through grand miracles, not through perfect timing, but through one unexpected seat on a train, one impossible request, and one decision made by two complete strangers who refused to stop believing that goodness still existed in the world. If this story touched your heart, please take a moment to like this video, leave a heartfelt comment, share it with someone who needs hope today, and subscribe to Soulful Tales too. Your support keeps these meaningful stories alive for people around the world. Special request, comment below with the words, "Kindness always finds its way home," if you believe one small act of compassion can completely change someone's life. As the sun slowly disappeared beyond the horizon, Rowan and Maris watched another train roll gently into the station. Hundreds of strangers stepped off, each carrying unseen burdens, silent hopes, and untold stories. They smiled at one another, knowing that sometimes destiny doesn't announce itself with fireworks or grand speeches. Sometimes it simply sits beside you on a train, takes your hand, and asks you to believe in a stranger for just 3 hours. And in those 3 hours, an ordinary life can become an unforgettable story that changes two hearts forever.